The stars had never seemed so close. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation window of the diplomatic vessel, Olive Branch, watching the massive alien station grow larger against the black of space. Behind her, the rest of the human delegation prepared for what would be the most important moment in human history. First contact had happened 3 months ago, and now, finally, they were about to meet the Xanathi Collective in person. Sarah touched the small photo in her pocket. Her daughter's face smiled up at her from the worn paper. She had promised to come home with stories about the aliens. She had promised to help build a bridge between worlds. The Xanathi station was beautiful in a cold, precise way. It stretched for miles, all smooth metal and geometric patterns that hurt to look at for too long. Lights blinked in sequences that might have been communication or art or something humans didn't have words for yet. The Olive Branch docked with barely a shudder, and Sarah felt her heart race. "Ready, Doctor?" Captain Williams asked. He was a military man, but he wore a simple suit today. No weapons, no uniforms that looked too aggressive. They were here to make friends. "As ready as I'll ever be," Sarah said. She smoothed her jacket and joined the others at the airlock. The Xanathi who met them were tall, nearly 8 feet, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. They had 4 arms and eyes that seemed to see in directions humans couldn't imagine. When they spoke, translation devices turned their sounds into words Sarah could understand, but something was always lost. Nuance, warmth, humor. "Welcome, humans of Earth," the lead Xanathi said. Its name sounded like wind through crystals, but the translator called it Ambassador Kethril. "You are young, you are small, but you may have potential." Sarah forced a smile. The condescension was clear even through the mechanical translation. "We're honored to be here. Humanity is eager to learn from the collective and to share what we can offer." Kethril made a sound that might have been laughter. "Yes, you will learn much. Come. We will show you our ways." The delegation toured the station for hours. The Xanathi showed them technology that made human science look like cave paintings. They spoke about the thousands of species in the collective, all living in harmony under Xanathi law. They never quite said that the Xanathi ruled everyone else, but Sarah heard it anyway, in every word. There were other humans on the station too, not diplomats, but colonists. Earth had sent a small group to live among the Xanathi, to learn their customs, to show that humans could adapt. Sarah met some of them during a meal break. They seemed happy enough, though a few looked tired, worn down by the constant feeling of being small and primitive. One of them was Marcus Webb. He was a teacher from California, 42 years old, with kind eyes and graying hair. He had volunteered to come because he believed humanity's future was in the stars. His daughter was back on Earth, 14 years old, and he showed Sarah pictures of her on his tablet with the proud smile of every father. "It's not easy here," Marcus admitted. "They don't mean to be cruel, I think. But they make you feel like a child who doesn't understand the adult world. Still, it's worth it. This is history." Sarah liked him immediately. "How long are you planning to stay?" "Another 6 months, then home. I miss my girl." He looked at his daughter's picture again. "But she understands. She knows I'm doing this for her future, for all the kids." That evening, the Xanathi held a ceremony. It was meant to welcome humanity into the collective formally. Thousands of beings from dozens of species gathered in a massive hall. At the center stood something that looked like a sculpture made of light and sound. The Xanathi explained through translators that it was ancient, that it represented the laws that held the collective together, that it was sacred beyond measure. Sarah and the delegation stood at the edge of the ceremony, watching as Xanathi priests or leaders or whatever they were performed rituals that humans barely understood. The other species watched with what looked like reverence or maybe fear. Then a small alien child, Something with too many legs and fur that glowed ran into the ceremonial space. It was chasing something, playing, not understanding the solemnity of the moment. It ran straight toward the sculpture of light, straight toward something that might hurt it or that it might break. Marcus was closest. He didn't think. He just moved, the way teachers do when a student is in danger. He ran forward and scooped the child up, turning his body to shield it. His shoulder bumped the sculpture. It flickered. A single tone rang out, wrong and discordant. Everything stopped. The child's parent rushed forward, taking the little one from Marcus's arms with grateful sounds. Marcus stepped back, hands up, apologizing. I'm so sorry, the child was in danger, Kethril moved faster than Sarah thought possible. One moment, the ambassador was across the room. The next, it stood in front of Marcus, all four arms spread wide. You have touched the law, Kethril said. The translator made its voice sound flat, but Sarah heard something underneath. Anger. Or maybe just certainty. I know, I'm sorry, Marcus said again. I didn't mean to. I was trying to help. Intention is irrelevant. Action is all. You have broken our most sacred object. The law demands correction. Sarah pushed forward. Wait, what does that mean? Correction? He made a mistake, but surely... Two other Xanathi moved to block her path. Captain Williams and the other delegates were suddenly surrounded by more of the tall aliens, not threatening exactly, but preventing movement. Kethril placed one hand on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus looked confused, then worried. Look, I really am sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Community service, a fine, whatever your laws say. I respect your culture. You will receive correction, Kethril said, as the law demands, as all species in the collective accept. The ambassador's other hand moved so fast Sarah almost missed it. Something flashed, bright and hot. Marcus made a small sound, surprised more than pained. He looked down at his chest where his shirt was turning red. No, Sarah heard herself say. It came out as barely a whisper. Marcus fell. The child's parent caught him, lowered him gently to the floor. Marcus looked at Sarah, confusion in his eyes, and then the confusion faded. The light went out. The ceremony continued as if nothing had happened. The Xanathi stepped around Marcus's body and resumed their rituals. The other species bowed their heads and said nothing. Sarah screamed. She tried to run to Marcus, but the Xanathi held her back with gentle, implacable strength. Captain Williams was shouting, demanding answers, threatening consequences. The other delegates stood frozen in shock. Kethril turned to face them. The law has been satisfied. The human accepted correction for his crime. This is how we maintain order. This is how we maintain peace. You will learn to accept our ways, as all species do. You killed him, Sarah said. Her voice shook. He was trying to save a child. He broke the law. Intention is irrelevant. Action is all. Kethril gestured, and other Xanathi began to carry Marcus's body away. We will preserve his remains for return to your people. The ceremony will continue. You are welcome to stay or to return to your vessel. Sarah looked at the other species in the hall. None of them met her eyes. They had all seen this before. They had all accepted it. The human delegation left. They carried Marcus's personal effects, the small things he had brought from Earth, his tablet with pictures of his daughter, a book of poetry, a coffee mug that said "World's Best Dad." As the olive branch undocked and began the long journey home, Sarah sat in the observation room and looked at the stars. They didn't seem close anymore. They seemed very far away and very cold. She opened Marcus's tablet and looked at the picture of his daughter. 14 years old, smiling, not knowing yet that her father was never coming home, not knowing that he had died for the crime of being kind. Sarah began to write her report. She wrote down everything she had seen, every word the Xanathi had said. She wrote down the names of every species that had stood by and watched. She wrote down the way Marcus had fallen, the surprise in his eyes. And she wrote down one more thing, the last line of her report. They think we'll accept this. They're wrong. The news reached Earth before the olive branch did. Someone on the station had sent a message, a simple transmission that said everything and nothing. Human killed by aliens. First contact has gone wrong. By the time Sarah and the delegation entered Earth's orbit, every screen on the planet showed Marcus Webb's face. The photo his daughter had taken last Christmas, him smiling, wearing a silly sweater, holding a cup of hot chocolate. The caption underneath said his name, his age, his hometown. It said he was a teacher. It said he had volunteered to represent humanity among the stars. It said he had been executed for trying to save a child. Sarah watched through the shuttle window as Earth grew larger. She could see the lights of cities, millions and billions of them, each one representing people who now knew Marcus's name. People who were angry, people who were afraid, people who wanted answers. The shuttle landed at UN headquarters in New York. The delegation stepped out to a crowd of reporters, cameras, microphones pushed forward like weapons. Questions came in a dozen languages all at once. Captain Williams held up his hand for silence. We will make a full report to the UN Security Council. We will answer all questions in time. Right now, we need to bring Marcus Webb home to his family. But the questions didn't stop. They followed Sarah through the building, down corridors, into secured rooms. Everyone wanted to know the same things. Why had the aliens killed him? What had humanity done to respond? Were the aliens coming to Earth? Were they at war? Sarah sat in the briefing room with diplomats and generals and politicians from every major nation. She told them everything she had seen. She showed them the footage from her personal recorder, the moment when Marcus fell, the way the aliens had simply continued their ceremony. She watched their faces change as they understood. They think this is normal, the Chinese ambassador said quietly. They think we'll accept this as law. They've dealt with thousands of species, Sarah said. Every one of them accepted Xanathi justice. Every one of them bent to their rules. The American general leaned forward. How many ships do they have? What are their weapons capabilities? More than us. Better than us. Sarah met his eyes. If we fight them now, we lose. Badly. Then we don't fight them now, the Russian representative said. We prepare, we learn, we make sure this never happens again. The meetings went on for days. The UN drafted responses, diplomatic messages, demands for explanations. They asked the Xanathi to return Marcus's body. They asked for an apology. They asked for guarantees that no human would ever face correction again. The Xanathi response came 3 days later. It was brief and clear. The human Marcus Webb violated the law. He received correction as specified in collective justice. This is the same standard applied to all species. The matter is closed. We will return his remains as requested. We expect humanity to accept collective law if you wish to join us. The message was polite in its way. Clinical. It was the response of beings who had done this 1,000 times before, who knew that every new species eventually understood how things worked. They were wrong. Sarah watched as the message was broadcast across Earth. She watched from UN headquarters, but she didn't need to be there to know what was happening. She could imagine it. Families gathering around screens, workers stopping in the streets to read the news, students in classrooms, seeing the Xanathi words and understanding what they meant. They meant that Marcus's life didn't matter. They meant that human life didn't matter. They meant that out there in the stars, humanity was nothing. The response was not what anyone expected. There were no riots, no panic, no calls for immediate revenge. Instead, there was silence. A deep, terrible silence as 8 billion people processed what had happened. And then, slowly, came unity. It started small. a candlelight vigil in Marcus's hometown in California, his neighbors and friends standing in the dark, holding lights. Then another vigil in New York, then Beijing, then Moscow, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Lagos, Sao Paulo. Within a week, every major city on Earth held vigils for Marcus Webb. People who had never met him, who came from different countries and spoke different languages and believed in different gods, all stood together in the dark and held lights for a man they had never known. Sarah was asked to deliver Marcus's personal effects to his family. It was a private ceremony, but the family agreed to let it be broadcast. The world needed to see it, they said. The world needed to understand. Marcus's daughter was named Jennifer. She was 14 years old, and when Sarah handed her the box with her father's things, the girl didn't cry. She just held the box and looked at Sarah with eyes that were too old now, too knowing. "They killed him for being kind," Jennifer said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Sarah said. There was no point in softening it. "And they think we'll just accept it." "Yes." Jennifer looked at the cameras, at the world watching through screens. "We won't." It became a rallying cry. "We won't," said in a million different ways, in 100 languages. "We won't accept this. We won't forget. We won't let this stand." The UN convened an emergency session. Every nation sent representatives. For the first time in decades, old enemies sat side by side. The American president sat next to the Chinese premier. The Russian leader shook hands with the Ukrainian president. Indian and Pakistani diplomats worked together on proposals. Sarah watched from the gallery as they debated, not about whether to respond, but about how. They all agreed on one thing: humanity would speak with one voice. The Secretary General stood before the Assembly and read the message they had drafted together. It would be sent to the Xanathi in every language humanity spoke. It would be sent on every frequency. It would be sent so that everyone in the collective could hear it. "We are humanity. We are 8 billion voices. You killed one of us. You killed Marcus Webb, who volunteered to represent us among the stars. You killed him for the crime of protecting a child. You expect us to accept this as justice. We do not. We want his body returned immediately. We want a formal apology. We want a guarantee that collective law will never harm another human being. You have 48 hours to respond." The message ended with a single sentence, added at Jennifer Webb's request. "He was one of us. That was enough." The Xanathi response came in 24 hours. It was shorter than before and slightly less polite. "Your demands are unreasonable. Collective law is not subject to negotiation. The human's body will be returned as a courtesy. No apology will be given. No exception to the law will be made. Accept these terms or remain outside the collective." Sarah read the message and felt something cold settle in her chest. They still didn't understand. They thought humanity was like the other species they had absorbed, species who eventually bent and accepted and obeyed. But those species hadn't spent 10,000 years fighting each other. Those species hadn't built empires and torn them down. Those species hadn't invented 100 ways to kill and then turned those inventions into art and philosophy and warning. The UN met again. This time, the military leaders sat at the table with the diplomats. This time, they talked about things that hadn't been discussed in decades: combining forces, sharing technology, preparing for what everyone now understood was inevitable. The Chinese general spoke first. "We have weapons we've never disclosed. I assume everyone here does." The American general nodded. "Project Horizon. We've been working on it for 30 years. We thought we might need it for each other someday. Turns out we need it for them." The Russian representative added, "We have information from old Soviet programs. Some succeeded, some failed, all were kept secret. They're yours now." One by one, each nation laid their cards on the table. Classified projects, hidden weapons, technologies that had been too dangerous or too controversial to use. Everything that humanity had built to fight itself was now offered freely. Sarah stood and addressed the room. "I've studied the Xanathi. I know their culture, their psychology, their weaknesses. Everything I learned about them, I'm giving to you. Use it." The Secretary General looked at the assembly. "Are we agreed then? We prepare for war?" Every hand went up. "Then let the record show that on this day, humanity spoke with one voice. They killed one of us. We will make sure they never kill another." Outside the UN, people continued to gather. The vigils grew larger. Signs appeared in windows and on buildings. "Remember Marcus Webb. Never again. We won't accept this." Earth began to change. Factories retooled. Scientists shared research freely across borders. Resources flowed to where they were needed, not where politics dictated. Humanity didn't become perfect. Old hatreds didn't vanish, but they became smaller, less important in the face of what was coming. Jennifer Webb appeared at another vigil, this time in Washington, D.C. She stood on a stage and looked at the thousands of people holding candles in the dark. "My dad believed in peace," she said. "He believed in reaching out to the stars with open hands. He believed in learning from others. He died for that belief. The aliens think that will make us afraid. They think that will make us submit." She paused, and her voice grew stronger. "They didn't know my dad, and they don't know us." The crowd erupted in applause, but Jennifer held up her hand. "My dad taught me that peace is worth fighting for. He taught me that kindness is strength. He taught me that we stand up for each other always. So I'm asking you, all of you, everyone watching, remember him. Remember what they took from us, and make sure they understand that when they killed one human, they made enemies of us all." The applause came again, louder this time. Sarah watched from the side of the stage and felt tears on her face. Marcus would have been proud of his daughter. He would have been proud of what humanity was becoming. The Xanathi sent one more message before the 48 hours were up. "Your emotional response is noted. We will return the body. Further communication should be conducted through proper diplomatic channels. We suggest you reconsider your demands." The message ended with what might have been a warning or advice. "Many species have threatened us. None have succeeded. Accept your place in the collective, or remain isolated in your small corner of space." The Secretary General read the message aloud to the assembly. When he finished, he looked at the representatives of 8 billion people and asked a simple question. "What is humanity's response?" The answer came from every delegate at once, in their own languages, but meaning the same thing. No. The world transformed in 90 days. Sarah watched it happen from her new position at Unified Command, a facility that hadn't existed 3 months ago. Now it housed representatives from every nation's military and space program, all working toward a single goal: never again. The walls of the command center displayed maps of Earth and space, showing the movement of resources and people. Factories in China retooled to build ships. Russian scientists shared propulsion technology they had hidden for decades. American weapons designers worked side by side with European engineers. Indian software developers collaborated with Japanese robotics experts. It wasn't perfect. Arguments still broke out over strategy, over resources, over old grudges that were hard to forget. But something fundamental had changed. When disagreements came up, someone would mention Marcus's name, and the fighting would stop. He had become more than a man. He had become a reminder of what humanity stood to lose. Sarah's job was to provide intelligence on the Xanathi. Every day she met with military strategists and shared what she knew: their technology, their culture, their psychology. Everything she had learned during those brief weeks on their station, she now turned into weapons. "They think in terms of hierarchy," she explained to a room full of generals. "Everything has its place. They've been the dominant power for so long that they can't imagine being challenged effectively. That's their weakness. The Chinese general, Wu, leaned forward. So they'll underestimate us. They already do. They think our technology is primitive. They think our unity is temporary. They think we'll behave like the other species they've absorbed. The American commander, General Harris, smiled grimly. Those species probably didn't spend thousands of years perfecting the art of war. Exactly, Sarah said. The Xanathi have fought before, but always against species who fought the way they expected. Formal battles, predictable tactics, honor-based combat. They've never faced an enemy who fights dirty. The Russian representative, Colonel Volkov, nodded. And humanity excels at fighting dirty. Plans developed over sleepless weeks. The unified command didn't just build ships, they built strategy. They looked at every war humanity had ever fought and asked what lessons applied to space combat. Ancient tactics from Sun Tzu, naval warfare from the World Wars, guerrilla strategies from Vietnam and Afghanistan, cyber warfare from the 21st century. Everything humanity knew about killing was poured into preparation. The shipyards worked day and night. The vessels they built weren't beautiful like Xanathi ships. They were ugly, practical things designed for one purpose. The engineers called them Hornets because they were small, fast, and built to sting. Each Hornet carried a crew of 5, no more, no less. They were armed with nuclear missiles, railguns, and experimental weapons that barely worked in testing. They had minimal life support and no escape pods. When Sarah saw the designs, she felt cold. You're building suicide ships. General Harris didn't look away from the schematics. We're building ships crewed by volunteers who understand the stakes. Every person who boards a Hornet knows they're probably not coming back. And we have more volunteers than ships. It was true. Recruitment centers across Earth were overwhelmed with people wanting to serve. Not just soldiers, but teachers like Marcus, doctors, engineers, parents, the old and the young. Everyone wanted to be part of humanity's answer. Jennifer Webb tried to enlist. She was turned away because of her age, but she didn't stop trying. Finally, she approached Sarah directly. "I want to help," the girl said. "I need to help." Sarah looked at Marcus's daughter and saw the determination in her eyes. "You can't fight. You're too young." "Then let me do something else. I can work communications. I can help with logistics. I can carry supplies. Anything." Jennifer's voice cracked. "I can't just sit at home while everyone else does something about what happened to my dad." Sarah made a decision that she hoped Marcus would have approved of. "Can you speak to people? Can you remind them why we're doing this?" "Yes." "Then that's your job. We need people to remember. We need them to stay united. You do that better than anyone." Jennifer became the face of humanity's resolve. She traveled to military bases and factories. She spoke to crews before they launched. She reminded everyone that Marcus had believed in peace, but that peace meant nothing if people weren't willing to defend it. Meanwhile, the technology leaped forward. Scientists shared research openly. Breakthroughs in one lab were immediately distributed to all others. The old system of patents and profits was suspended. Everything served the goal. Dr. Yuki Tanaka in Tokyo developed a new type of reactor that could power ships for months. Dr. James Okonkwo in Lagos created an algorithm that let ship computers predict alien movements based on Sarah's cultural data. Dr. Sofia Ramirez in Mexico City invented a missile guidance system that was smarter and meaner than anything humans had built before. The cyber warfare division was led by a hacker who went by the name Prophet. Nobody knew his real name or where he came from, but he had broken into military systems of a dozen countries before someone had the bright idea to recruit him. Now he worked with a team pulled from intelligence agencies worldwide. "The Xanathi use networked systems," Prophet explained to Sarah during one briefing. "They're more advanced than ours, but they're also more interconnected. Everything talks to everything. It makes them efficient." It also makes them vulnerable, Sarah said, understanding. Prophet grinned. Exactly. We get into one system, we can spread everywhere. I'm building viruses that would make old human malware look like children's toys. But I need to know more about how they think, how they organize information, what they consider important. Sarah spent hours with Prophet's team, describing everything she remembered. The way Xenathi organized their data, the way they prioritized information, the cultural assumptions built into their technology. It all went into the weapons Prophet was creating. We won't just attack their ships, Prophet said. We'll attack their confidence. We'll make them doubt their own systems. We'll make them afraid of their own technology. The Xenathi sent diplomatic messages during these months. They were patient at first, offering humanity chances to reconsider. They explained that collective law had stood for millennia. They provided examples of other species who had protested at first, but eventually understood the wisdom of order. The messages grew less patient as time went on. The Xenathi could see what humanity was building. Their surveillance detected the ships, the weapons, the preparation. They seemed puzzled more than worried. One message arrived directed specifically at Sarah. Kethril, the ambassador who had killed Marcus, wrote to her personally. Dr. Chen, you are a scientist. You understand the necessity of order. Surely you see that one individual's death is meaningless compared to the stability of civilizations. The human Marcus Webb broke our law. He received appropriate correction. This is justice. Your species' emotional reaction is understandable but irrational. Help them see reason before they make choices they will regret. Sarah read the message 3 times. Then she wrote a response and sent it through every channel she could access, ensuring it would be heard not just by Kethril, but by every species in the collective. Ambassador Kethril, you are correct that I am a scientist. I understand order. I understand systems. I understand cause and effect. Here is what you don't understand. Marcus Webb was not meaningless. No human is meaningless. You applied your law without considering our values. You assumed we would bend like the others. That was your mistake. You didn't kill a random member of a species. You killed a teacher, a father, a man who volunteered to build bridges between worlds. You killed someone we loved, and you did it in front of us, expecting us to accept it. We are not the species you've dealt with before. We are humanity. We have spent 10,000 years fighting each other and learning from every battle. We have killed billions of our own kind and somehow learned to feel guilt about it. We have built weapons that can destroy our world and chosen not to use them. We are violent and peaceful, savage and civilized, divided and united. You thought killing one of us would teach us our place. Instead, you taught us that we need to teach you yours. See you soon. The message went viral across Earth. People quoted it. Teachers explained it in schools. Military commanders read it to their troops before missions. It became a promise. General Wu approached Sarah after the message was sent. That was either very brave or very foolish. You've made yourself a target. They already made me a target when they killed Marcus in front of me, Sarah said. At least now they know we're not afraid. 90 days after Marcus's death, the fleet was ready. 300 Hornet-class ships, each one carrying a crew that had said goodbye to their families, each one loaded with weapons both conventional and experimental, each one piloted by volunteers who understood they were probably not coming home. General Harris stood before the assembled crews in the main hangar. Thousands of people in uniform representing every nation on Earth. Behind them, the Hornets waited, ugly and deadly. You all know why we're here, Harris said. You all know what happened to Marcus Webb. You all volunteered knowing what that means. The Xenathi think we're primitive. They think we're emotional. They think we'll break the way others have broken. He paused. They're right about one thing. We are emotional. We love our people. We grieve our dead. We remember our promises. And right now, 8 billion people are watching and hoping and praying that you'll make sure nothing like this ever happens again. The crews stood silent, ready. The Xenathi have better technology. They have more experience. They have conquered thousands of worlds. Harris's voice grew stronger. But they've never fought humans. They've never faced an enemy who turns every disadvantage into a weapon. They've never encountered a species that will sacrifice everything to protect their own. They killed one of us. We're about to show them what that costs. The launch sequence began. One by one, the Hornets lifted off from bases across Earth. China, Russia, America, Europe, Africa, South America, Australia. Every continent contributed ships. Every nation sent its best. Sarah watched from Unified Command as the fleet assembled in orbit. 300 small ships against an empire that spanned star systems. It should have been laughable. It should have been suicide. But Sarah had studied the Xanathi. She knew their assumptions. She knew their weaknesses. And she knew something they didn't. Humanity had never been good at accepting impossible odds. Jennifer Webb stood beside her, watching the screens. "My dad would be proud," she said quietly. "He'd also be terrified," Sarah admitted. "So am I. But we're doing it anyway. Because we're human. It's what we do." The fleet oriented toward the Xanathi border. The journey would take 2 weeks. 2 weeks for the Xanathi to prepare. 2 weeks for humanity to hope. Before the ships entered faster-than-light travel, one message was broadcast from the fleet, not to the Xanathi, but to Earth. It was read by a young pilot named Chen Zhao, who had grown up admiring Marcus Webb's courage. To everyone watching at home, to our families, to our friends, to every human being on Earth and in space, we go now to face the unknown. We go to face an enemy that has never been beaten. We go knowing we might not return. We do this because Marcus Webb deserves justice, because humanity deserves respect, because no one should ever again think they can kill one of us without consequence. Remember us. Remember why we fight. And if we don't come home, make sure his daughter knows we tried. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, and Earth waited. 8 billion people held their breath. The Xanathi prepared to teach another species their place in the order of things. Neither side knew that everything was about to change. The Xanathi fleet waited at the border. Kethril stood on the bridge of the command ship Eternal Order, watching the scanners detect the approaching human vessels. Around the bridge, crew members moved with calm efficiency. This was routine. They had done this hundreds of times before with species that needed to be taught their limitations. 300 small craft, the tactical officer reported. Primitive propulsion systems, simple weapons. They're barely holding formation. Kethril made the sound that meant satisfaction. They send their fleet to die so they can claim they tried. A predictable emotional response. How many ships do we need to teach them? 30 of our cruisers should suffice, Ambassador. These human craft are no match for our technology. Then we use 30. The rest remain at the station. This will be over quickly. On the Hornet 1, the flagship of humanity's fleet, Captain Elizabeth Martinez reviewed the tactical display. 30 Xanathi cruisers moving to intercept. Each one was 5 times larger than Earth's largest ship. Each one carried weapons that could destroy a Hornet with a single shot. "They're arrogant," her tactical officer said. "Only 30 ships." Martinez smiled without humor. "Good. That's what we're counting on. Send the signal. All ships follow the plan. Remember, we don't need to win a fair fight. We just need to hurt them." The human fleet split into smaller groups as they approached. It looked chaotic, disorganized. The Xanathi watched and saw confirmation of what they believed. These humans didn't know how to fight in space. They were panicking already. The first wave of Hornets charged directly at the Xanathi line. 50 ships, engines burning hot, missiles armed. The Xanathi opened fire with casual precision. Energy beams lanced through space. The Hornets started to die. But before they died, they launched everything they had. Nuclear missiles, hundreds of them, each one guided by AI systems that had learned to think like prey, avoiding a predator. The Xanathi point defense systems tracked and destroyed most of them. Most, but not all. The first nuclear detonation caught a Xanathi cruiser amidships. The ship's shields held, but the energy output made their sensors scream. More explosions followed. The Xanathi weren't damaged yet, but suddenly space was full of radiation and electromagnetic chaos. Clever, Kethril admitted. They sacrificed their ships to blind us, but it won't matter. Continue firing. More Hornets died, but each one got closer before dying, and each one released its payload. The space between the two fleets became a wall of fire and radiation. Xanathi sensors, designed to operate in clean, ordered space, struggled with the chaos. Then the second wave hit, not from the front, but from above and below. Hornets that had used the radiation cover to maneuver into unexpected positions. They came in fast and close, closer than the Xanathi thought possible, closer than was safe. One Hornet, piloted by Commander James Wright, simply rammed a Xanathi cruiser at full speed. His ship was tiny compared to the alien vessel, but at those speeds even tiny things hit hard. The Hornet penetrated the cruiser's shield and exploded against its hull. The cruiser's armor held, but systems flickered offline. For the first time in the battle, a Xanathi ship went dark. "Impossible," the tactical officer said. "They're using suicide tactics." "Then they'll die faster," Kethril replied. But there was uncertainty in the ambassador's voice now. These humans weren't fighting the way species were supposed to fight. Martinez watched from Hornet 1 as the battle developed exactly as planned. The first two waves had been sacrifices, yes, but necessary ones. They had cost the Xanathi their sensor advantage and proved that human weapons could hurt them. "Third wave," she ordered. "Execute Prophet's gift." Hidden among the debris of destroyed Hornets were small packages. Not weapons, exactly. Communication devices that began broadcasting as soon as they detected Xanathi systems nearby. Prophet's team had spent months building these things, tiny seeds of chaos designed to exploit every weakness Sarah had described. The packages connected to Xanathi networks. They spoke in protocols that mimicked Xanathi communication. They asked polite questions in the correct format. And when the Xanathi systems responded, because they were programmed to respond to properly formatted requests, the packages delivered their payload: viruses, worms, malware that didn't just destroy data, but rewrote it. Navigation systems suddenly reported incorrect positions. Weapons targeting became unreliable. Communication channels filled with false orders. On the Eternal Order, chaos erupted. "All ships report system malfunctions. Navigation is compromised. Weapons targeting is failing. Communication is unreliable." "How?" Kethril demanded. "Our systems are isolated. They're secured against intrusion. The humans are exploiting something, some weakness we didn't know existed." On Earth, Prophet watched the telemetry and grinned. "That's right. You built your systems assuming everyone would play by your rules. We don't play by rules." The fourth wave of Hornets attacked while the Xanathi were blind and confused. These ships carried railguns, simple kinetic weapons that didn't rely on complex technology, just mass and velocity. They fired ball bearings at a significant fraction of light speed. A Xanathi cruiser, its shields flickering from system errors, took a railgun hit to its engine section. The projectile punched through armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. The ship began to list, venting atmosphere. Another cruiser exploded as its own weapons accidentally fired while targeting systems were compromised. The Xanathi were shooting themselves now, confused by sensors that lied and computers that couldn't be trusted. "Fall back," Kethril ordered. "All ships retreat to the station. We need to understand what's happening." But the human fleet pursued. Not to destroy the Xanathi, not yet. They wanted the aliens to run. They wanted them to report back. They wanted the entire collective to know that humanity had made them bleed. The Xanathi retreat was orderly despite the chaos. They were still disciplined, still trained. But 6 of their cruisers didn't make it back. 2 destroyed outright, 4 crippled and left drifting. Humanity had lost 97 Hornets, nearly a third of their fleet, but they had proven something that the Xanathi had thought impossible. The primitive humans could fight. More than that, they could win. Kethril reached the station and immediately convened the collective council. Representatives of a dozen species appeared via hologram. All of them looked concerned. "The humans have attacked," Kethril reported. "They used unconventional tactics, suicide strikes, cyber warfare. They exploited vulnerabilities in our systems that we didn't know existed." The head of the council, an ancient being whose species had joined the collective millennia ago, spoke carefully. "Perhaps we should negotiate. The humans have proven more dangerous than anticipated." "No," Kethril said firmly. "They must be taught. If we show weakness now, if we bend to their demands, every other species will question our authority. The law must stand." "Then send more ships," another council member said. "Overwhelm them with numbers." "That's exactly what we'll do. But first we adapt. We isolate our systems. We prepare for their tactics. And then we crush them so thoroughly that no species will ever question us again." The Xanathi mobilized. Not 30 ships this time, 300. A tenth of their total fleet, pulled from stations across their territory. It was more firepower than they had deployed in centuries. On Earth, Unified Command tracked the Xanathi buildup with growing concern. "They're bringing everything," General Wu said. "Our remaining ships can't face that many." "We never expected them to," Sarah replied. She was tired, running on coffee and determination, but her mind was clear. "We proved we can hurt them. Now we make them understand what that means." Jennifer Webb sat in the communications center, preparing to broadcast another message. This one wouldn't go to Earth. This one was for every species in the collective. "People of the galaxy," she began. "You don't know me. My name is Jennifer Webb. My father was Marcus, the human who was killed by the Xanathi for protecting a child. You've been told that his death was justice, that collective law is absolute, that the Xanathi maintain order and peace. I'm here to tell you something different. My father died because he was kind. He died because he acted on instinct to save someone smaller and weaker. The Xanathi killed him for that. They killed him in front of witnesses. They expected everyone to accept it. But here's what they didn't understand. My father wasn't special. He was just human. And there are 8 billion more of us just like him. We don't accept the law. We don't accept that kindness is a crime. We don't accept that one species gets to decide justice for everyone. You've seen what we did to their fleet. That was just the beginning. We're not asking you to fight with us. We're not asking you to rebel. We're just asking you to remember something. The Xanathi aren't invincible. Their law isn't absolute, and maybe, just maybe, you don't have to accept things the way they are." The message spread through collective networks faster than the Xanathi could stop it. Species that had lived under Xanathi rule for generations heard a human girl tell them that resistance was possible. The Xanathi fleet arrived at the border in force. 300 ships against humanity's remaining 200 Hornets. It should have been a slaughter. Martinez looked at the odds and felt fear, but also pride. Her crews had volunteered knowing this might happen. They had said goodbye to their families. They had made peace with death. "All ships," she broadcast. "This is it. We can't win this fight, not in any conventional sense. But we can make them pay. We can make them remember. And we can buy Earth time to prepare for whatever comes next, for Marcus Webb, for humanity, for everyone who's ever been told they don't matter." The battle began. Human tactics had evolved. They didn't charge in waves now. They fought like wolves in packs, coordinating attacks that focused on one Xanathi ship at a time. They used debris as cover. They exploited system vulnerabilities. They made every shot count. The Xanathi adapted, too. They fought more carefully, Anticipated human tactics worked to overwhelm through sheer numbers, but adaptation is learned behavior. Humans had been adapting to war for 10,000 years. Commander Sarah Kim led a pack of 5 Hornets against a Xanathi battleship. They darted in from different angles, forcing the enemy to split their fire. One Hornet died, then another, but the others got through. Railgun fire and nuclear missiles hammered the battleship until its shields collapsed. The Xanathi ship didn't explode, but it went dark and began to drift. The pattern repeated across the battlefield. Humans died, ships exploded, but every loss took Xanathi vessels with them. On the Eternal Order, Kethril watched the tactical display with growing horror. This is impossible. We outnumber them. We have better technology. Why are they still fighting? Because they don't care if they die, the tactical officer said quietly. Every human ship we destroy takes one of ours with it. At this rate, we'll win. But we'll lose half our fleet doing it. Then we've already lost, Kethril realized. Even if we destroy every human ship here, Earth will build more. They'll keep coming. They'll keep fighting. They'll never accept the law. For the first time in millennia, the Xanathi understood fear. Martinez's ship was damaged, systems failing, but she stayed in the fight. Around her, the remnants of humanity's fleet fought on. They were down to 70 ships now. Still they fought. Still they made the Xanathi pay. "Captain," her communication officer called. "Message from the Xanathi. They want to negotiate." Martinez looked at the tactical display. The Xanathi still had over 200 ships. They were winning by any measure, but they were asking to talk. "Put them through." Kethril's image appeared on the screen. The ambassador looked different now, less certain, less arrogant. "Captain Martinez, your people have fought bravely. You have proven your courage. Surely now we can discuss terms. Surely we can find a way to end this bloodshed." Martinez thought of Marcus. She thought of the 97 ships lost in the first battle. She thought of the 130 ships lost today. She thought of Jennifer Webb somewhere on Earth, waiting to hear if her father's death had meant anything. "You want terms?" Martinez asked. "Here are our terms. You return Marcus Webb's body. You apologize to every human being. You abolish your correction law. You guarantee that no species in your collective will ever face execution for trying to help someone. And you do it publicly, so everyone knows you've changed. Those terms are impossible. The law has stood for—" "Then we keep fighting," Martinez interrupted. "We keep dying. We keep taking your ships with us. And when we run out of ships here, Earth will send more. We'll fight you for years, decades, centuries, however long it takes, because that's what we do. We're very good at long wars. Ask our history." Kethril was silent for a long moment. "You would sacrifice your entire species for one man?" "No," Martinez said. "We would sacrifice everything for the principle that you don't get to kill us without consequence. Marcus was the first, but he won't be the last if we give in. So yes, we'll fight. And yes, we'll die. But we'll make sure you remember the cost." The transmission ended. The battle resumed. But something had changed. The Xanathi fought more carefully now. They took fewer risks. They began to wonder if victory was worth it. On Earth, 8 billion people watched and waited. They saw their ships die one by one. They saw the messages from crews saying goodbye. They mourned. They grieved. They prepared to send more. And they remembered Marcus Webb, whose only crime was being kind. The battle stopped not with a bang, but with silence. The Xanathi fleet held position. The remaining 43 human ships waited, weapons armed but not firing. Between them floated debris. Human ships, Xanathi cruisers, the wreckage of assumptions about how wars were supposed to work. On the Eternal Order, Kethril stood before the collective council. The holograms of species leaders watched with expressions ranging from concern to something that might have been hope. "The humans refuse to yield," Kethril reported. "We've destroyed over 80% of their fleet, but the remainder fights with the same intensity. They don't fear death. They don't accept defeat. Our projections show that if we destroy all their ships here, they will send more and more. They have the resources. They have the unity. Most importantly, they have the will." The ancient council leader spoke slowly. "Then we have failed. We intended to teach them their place. Instead, they've taught us something we had forgotten." "What?" Kethril asked. "That fear maintains order only until someone refuses to be afraid." Another council member, representing a species that had joined the collective 5,000 years ago, spoke up. "The human girl's message has spread throughout our territories. Our people are asking questions. Why did the Xanathi kill someone for protecting a child? Why is kindness a crime? Why do we accept laws we never agreed to?" "This is dangerous," Kethril said. "If we appear weak, if we negotiate, the entire collective could fracture." "It's already fracturing," the Ancient One replied. "The humans have shown everyone that the Xanathi can bleed. The question now is whether we continue to bleed or whether we adapt. The humans don't want to conquer us. They want justice for one man. Perhaps giving them that is less costly than the alternative." Kethril felt the weight of millennia of certainty crumbling. "You're saying we should surrender to their demands?" "I'm saying we should recognize when we've made a mistake. The human Marcus Webb should not have died. Our law did not account for cultural differences, for the instinct to protect. We applied our justice without wisdom. Perhaps it's time to admit that." The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The collective would negotiate. The message reached Captain Martinez an hour later. She gathered her remaining crew, all of them exhausted, all of them ready to keep fighting if necessary. "They want to talk," she told them. "Real talks, not demands. Actual negotiation." The crews erupted in cheers, but Martinez held up her hand. "We haven't won yet. We still need to make sure Marcus gets justice. We still need to make sure this never happens again. So we're not celebrating. Not yet." Back on Earth, Sarah Chen was called to unified command. The Secretary General was there, along with representatives from every major nation. They were preparing for the negotiation. "We need you there," the Secretary General said to Sarah. "You understand them better than anyone. You know their culture, their psychology. Help us make sure we get this right." Sarah thought about Marcus, about the way he had fallen, about his daughter waiting for news. "What are our demands?" General Wu stepped forward. "We return to the original terms. Marcus's body returned. Public apology. Abolition of the correction law, guarantees of individual rights across the collective." "That's not enough," Sarah said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "We need more than an apology. We need them to understand why what they did was wrong. We need structural change, not just words. And we need to make sure every species in the collective knows that things have changed." "What do you propose?" the American president asked. Sarah had been thinking about this for weeks, during the long nights when she couldn't sleep. "We need a memorial, not just on Earth, but on their station, where Marcus died. A place that reminds everyone what happened and why it should never happen again. We need the right for species to maintain their own laws and cultures within the collective. We need a council where all species have equal voice, not just the Xanathi. And we need Marcus's story told to every young member of every species, so they grow up knowing that protecting others is not a crime." The room was silent as people absorbed what she was saying. Finally, the Chinese premier spoke. "You're not asking for justice for one man. You're asking for reform of their entire civilization." "Yes," Sarah said, "because if we just get an apology and nothing changes, then Marcus died for nothing. But if we change how the collective works, if we make them understand that every individual matters, then maybe his death means something. Maybe it prevents the next Marcus Webb from dying. The Secretary General nodded slowly. Then those are our terms. The negotiation took place on neutral ground, a small station halfway between Xanathi and human space. Sarah arrived with a human delegation. Jennifer Webb insisted on coming too. She was still too young by most standards, but she had earned the right to be there. Kethril met them at the airlock. The ambassador looked older somehow, despite alien biology that Sarah didn't fully understand. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect or might have been fear. Dr. Chen, you returned to us under very different circumstances. Yes, Sarah said. Let's make sure they stay different. The negotiation room was simple. A table, chairs designed for various biologies, translators on every surface, and in the center, a hologram showing the casualty count. Human ships lost, Xanathi ships lost, names scrolling by. Marcus Webb at the top of the list. Jennifer walked to the hologram and touched her father's name. This is why we're here. Not because of ships or politics or power, because of him, because he mattered. Kethril and the other Xanathi representatives watched the girl. One of them spoke. We understand that now. We did not before. Your father's death was unjust by your standards. We applied our law without consideration of your values. This was an error. An error, Jennifer repeated. The word hung in the air, cold and insufficient. Sarah stepped forward. An error that killed a man, an error that started a war, an error that cost thousands of lives on both sides. We need to make sure that error never happens again. The negotiation lasted 3 days. The Xanathi argued that changing fundamental laws would destabilize the collective. The humans argued that the collective was already destabilized, and that change was the only way forward. Other species sent representatives, not officially, but they came anyway, standing in observation rooms, watching as humanity demanded rights that they had stopped dreaming about generations ago. Sarah presented the human demands, point by point. Return Marcus's body with full honors. Public apology broadcast to every world in the collective. Abolition of summary execution for cultural misunderstandings. Right of species to maintain their own laws within reason. Creation of a multi-species council with equal representation. And the memorial placed where Marcus died to remind everyone of the cost of inflexibility. These demands would fundamentally alter the collective, Kethril said. Good, Sarah replied, because the current system killed a good man for being kind. If that's what your order requires, then your order is wrong. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of the Xanathi representatives, younger than the others, spoke up. Perhaps Dr. Chen is correct. We have maintained order, yes, but we have also stagnated. The collective has not truly evolved in millennia. We enforce compliance, not cooperation. We demand obedience, not understanding. The humans have shown us something we had forgotten. That conflict can lead to growth. That challenge can lead to improvement. Maybe we need this change. Kethril looked at the younger Xanathi with surprise. You would overturn millennia of tradition? I would honor the spirit of our law rather than just its letter. Our law exists to protect civilization. But what good is civilization if it crushes individuals? What good is order if it prevents kindness? The human Marcus Webb saw a child in danger and acted to protect that child. We killed him for it. That is not justice. That is cruelty disguised as order. The argument continued, but the momentum had shifted. Other Xanathi began to nod. Other species representatives watching from observation rooms began to hope. On the 4th day, Kethril stood and faced the human delegation. The collective agrees to your terms, all of them. We will return Marcus Webb's remains. We will issue a public apology. We will reform our laws. We will create the memorial. We will restructure the collective to give all species equal voice. This will take time. There will be resistance. But we agree. Sarah felt tears on her face. She hadn't expected to cry. Why? Why agree to all of it? Kethril was quiet for a moment. Because the alternative is to keep fighting you. And we've learned that humanity doesn't stop. You'll fight us for years, decades, generations. You'll make us pay for every injustice. You'll never accept our superiority because you don't believe anyone is superior. You believe every individual matters. That's your strength and our weakness. So we adapt. We learn. We become something better than we were. Jennifer spoke up, her voice steady. My dad would have liked that. He believed people could change. He believed in second chances, but he also believed in accountability. So you'll do all of this? You'll really change? We will, Kethril said. We give you our word. And unlike before, we now understand what it means when someone gives their word to humanity. The formal ceremony took place a week later. Marcus Webb's body was returned to Earth with full honors. Every nation sent representatives. Xanathi ships escorted the transport carrying his remains, flying in formation as a sign of respect. The funeral was broadcast to every world in the collective. Billions of beings across dozens of species watched as humans said goodbye to the man who had changed everything. Jennifer gave the eulogy. My dad was an ordinary person, she said. He taught history. He liked bad jokes. He couldn't cook anything except breakfast. He was just a regular guy who volunteered for something extraordinary because he believed in building bridges. The aliens killed him for protecting a child. They thought we'd accept it. They were wrong. Not because my dad was special, though he was special to me. They were wrong because every human is special. Every person matters. Every life has value. That's what we believe. That's what we fought for. And that's what we'll keep fighting for as long as we need to. She paused and looked directly at the camera, knowing that beings across the galaxy were watching. To everyone who lives under someone else's rules, who's been told your life doesn't matter, who's been afraid to stand up, you saw what happened here. You saw what happens when one species says enough. You saw that the powerful can be challenged, that justice can be won, that individuals matter. Remember that. Remember my dad. Remember that 8 billion humans said never again and meant it. Marcus Webb was buried in Arlington National Cemetery next to soldiers and heroes. His headstone was simple. It had his name, his dates, and one sentence. He was one of us. That was enough. The memorial on the Xanathi station was unveiled a month later. It stood in the exact spot where Marcus had fallen, a simple design requested by Jennifer, a statue of a man reaching out to protect a child, and around the base, inscribed in every language of every species in the collective, were the words, "Never again." Sarah stood at the unveiling with Jennifer and the rest of the human delegation. Beings from across the collective came to see it. Some touched the statue. Some left flowers or equivalents from their own cultures. Some just stood and thought about what it meant. A young alien, something with too many limbs and eyes that glowed, approached Jennifer. Through a translator, it asked, "Was he really just a teacher?" "Yes," Jennifer said. "Just a teacher. Just a dad. Just a person." "Then anyone can be a hero." "That's right. Anyone can choose to protect someone else. Anyone can choose to do the right thing even when it's dangerous. That's what my dad taught me." The reforms came slowly but steadily. The collective created a new council with representatives from every species. Laws were reviewed and rewritten to account for cultural differences. The summary execution policy was abolished. Species were given autonomy over their own internal affairs. Some Xanathi resisted. Some species were afraid of change. But the reforms continued because everyone had seen what happened when humanity was pushed too far. They had seen the cost of arrogance. They had learned that order built on fear eventually crumbles. Earth took its place in the collective, not as a junior member, but as an equal. Human ships patrolled borders alongside Xanathi vessels. Human diplomats sat on councils and argued for individual rights. Human culture spread through the galaxy, bringing with it ideas about democracy, about choice, about the value of every person. Sarah continued her work as an ambassador and advisor. She traveled between worlds, helping to bridge gaps between cultures, teaching others what humanity had learned through 10,000 years of conflict and cooperation. One day, 5 years after Marcus's death, she returned to Earth and visited his grave. Jennifer was there too, now 19, about to start her own career in the diplomatic corps. "He would be proud of you," Sarah said. "He would be proud of all of us," Jennifer replied. "We kept our promise. Never again." They stood in silence for a moment, remembering. Then Jennifer placed fresh flowers on the grave and turned to go. "Dr. Chen, do you think we really changed things? Do you think the collective is actually different now?" Sarah thought about the species she had met, who were slowly finding their voices. The young beings who grew up learning Marcus's story. The laws that now protected individuals rather than just enforcing order. The memorial that reminded everyone what had been lost and what had been won. "Yes," she said, "we changed things. Not perfectly, not completely, but we proved that change is possible. We proved that one person can matter. We proved that humanity stands together and that when we do, we're unstoppable." "Good," Jennifer said, "because I have a feeling we're going to need to prove it again someday." "Probably," Sarah agreed. "But next time, we'll be ready. And next time, the whole galaxy will be watching, knowing what happens when you kill one human." They walked away from the grave together. Behind them, the inscription caught the afternoon light. "He was one of us. That was enough." Across the galaxy, beings looked at the memorial on the Xanathi station and learned a new phrase, a human phrase. 2 words that captured everything that had happened, everything that had changed, everything that humanity had promised and delivered. Never again. It became a rallying cry for the oppressed, a warning to the powerful, a reminder that individuals matter, that justice is worth fighting for, that one person's death can change the course of civilizations. The Xanathi learned it. The collective learned it. And in time, every species that reached for the stars learned it too. Humans were no longer the primitive species from a backward planet. They were the species that had looked at impossible odds and refused to back down. They were the species that valued every individual life enough to risk everything. They were the species that turned grief into unity and loss into purpose. They were the species that said never again and meant it. 8 billion voices had made a promise, and humanity always kept its promises.